Alright guys, welcome back to American Heritage Garage. In today's video, we got some brake issues with this 2000 Chevy Silverado 1500 Classic. What's going on with this thing is we have a left front brake that's sticking. Okay, normally it's a pretty easy diagnosis. It's a bad stuck brake caliper. Most everybody kind of knows that. Here's the trick. As this thing sits out at the shop, the customer replaced the brake caliper, the brake hose, put a new brake line from the ABS pump up to the front brake hose. Okay, so plus a new wheel bearing, a bunch of other stuff. So they tried to do a little shade tree mechanic stuff, still didn't fix the problem. On top of that, we have an ABS light with the brand new sensor. So we have some diagnostic work to do, but I think I know what it is. Let's get this thing up in the air and check it out. Okay guys, so here's the new setup. It's going to be a little hard for you to see, but that's a brand new brake rotor. And you can actually tell there's some discoloration from this thing running so hot because it is sticking. Okay, so the truck's just pulled in. I have the wheel off. Okay, and we'll try to spin this. Okay, so it spins no problem. Now, here's the trick. We're going to make sure the bleeder's tight and everything. I'm going to start this thing up because I did do one quick test on it. I don't want to lie to you guys. I'm going to start this thing up, pump the brakes a few times, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we started it up, pumped the brakes. It's a lot harder to turn, as you guys can see. So normally, like I said, this is a fairly easy diagnosis. It's a stuck brake caliper. Okay, what happens is you push fluid behind the caliper piston. Okay, and there's something going on in there, gunk, something, rust, whatever, and it doesn't allow that square seal to draw the square cut O-ring. It doesn't allow it to draw the caliper piston back like it should, so it sticks. Well, this is a brand new caliper. I'm not saying that that's not the issue. Brand new parts can cause issues too. Brand new brake hose, brand new ABS sensor, brand new wheel bearing. Like I said, everything is new here. Here's how you tell that that's not the problem. Because I take my 10mm wrench and I crack this brake bleeder a little bit. I got fluid dripping. Okay, that's it. Now, no problem. What's happening is the fluid is sticking up higher. Okay, it's not sticking in the caliper. The caliper releases when you let the fluid pressure off it. There's an issue and the fluid pressure is not being able to be released off it. Okay? One other thing to note, if you have a pulling issue when you hit the brakes, you need to look at the opposite side of which way it's pulling. Example, if you're coming to a stop sign and you hit the brakes and the vehicle somewhat violently pulls to the right, what your issue is your left brake is not engaging. Most of the time you have a bad brake hose at that point. An easy way to diagnose that is to take your brake hose off at the back of the caliper and let it hang. If no fluid comes out, bad brake hose. If it drips a steady fluid, you have other issues. Just something to think about. Let's go up underneath the hood and check something out. So we're up under the hood here, guys. Again, my suspicion is due to the fact that the brakes release when you open the bleeder and it takes the pressure off, that the caliper is in fact not stuck, and we have some sort of an issue in the master cylinder. Now, of course, for the customer's sake, I wish they would have just brought this out to me, because like I said, they changed the caliper, the this, the that, the hose, the lines. They did all kinds of extra work without running through the proper diagnostic procedures. But we are where we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to pump this brake up, and we're going to look actually at the piston behind. So in between the booster and the master cylinder, you'll see the piston in there. And we're going to leave the lines attached, and we're going to look and see if that piston is stuck at all. It may or may not be. There could be something in the actual bore, but we'll see here. So let me put a few pumps on this brake and see what it does. The brake is still good and locked up. So we are going to reach in here and unbolt this master cylinder. Let's get it slipped off the studs. Okay, well, it doesn't look like it's sticking, but there's brake fluid leaking. The booster's got a fair amount of fluid in there, like a lot. So I don't know if you can see from there. I'll show you in a second. It appears that the booster is about full up to here with brake fluid. So that's a no-go. We'll replace this master cylinder, and this booster is no good anymore. That's all there is to it. So we'll let me spin the camera around and I'll show you what I'm looking at in here. Okay, so I switched cameras out here. It's going to be a little hard probably for you to see, but can you see the fluid right on the piston of the master cylinder here? And then I'll see if I can show you. I don't know if I'll be able to get good enough light down in here. Doesn't look like I can. I'll have to show you when I get it off. But let's stick this guy down in there. You can see the fluid moving around. See all the fluid on there? Definitely not a good thing. So we are going to get the lines off the master cylinder and unbolt the brake booster from inside and replace this stuff. Okay, so I bolted the master cylinder back up onto the booster just for leverage as I'm taking these lines off. In this case, it's the line flare nut fittings are 14 mil. Okay, so we're going to remove the sensor, the level sensor plug here. Get that out of the way. Okay, we're going to take the vacuum source off of the booster, get that out of the way while we're up here. Okay, then we'll crack these lines. Now, normally I want some kind of containment system to catch any fluid that comes out, but in this case, it's really hard to get anything under there, so we're just going to pack a whole crap ton of rags. Just because I hate to leak brake fluid and crap all over the place. It's pretty nasty stuff. So we'll crack these lines loose. Hopefully they come pretty easily. Sometimes what you can do is go tight just a little bit. Just turn them a little bit tight. Just like a scotch. And that breaks free any sort of debris or rust on the threads or anything like that. We'll give it the old palm, give it a couple turns. She's pretty loose. Big thing you want to do is make sure that the fitting is spinning on the line and that you're not actually twisting the line, because you could be twisting the line down farther from the fitting, you know, down there or something, you might not know it. So I usually try and see, in this case this fitting wants to spin with the line a little, so we'll see. There, it broke loose. I think I'm going to throw a fender cover up on this thing too. I forgot to do that, because when I lift this master over. I don't want it to get any brake fluid on anything. So at this point you can use just a regular combination wrench because you don't have to worry about stripping the flare nuts off. So we'll get that going here until I can get them with my hands. Should start leaking brake fluid out of here pretty soon. Somebody was on this flare nut at one point because it's a little goofed up. This is why you use flare wrenches if you can. Okay, so got our lines loose, so now we'll go back and loosen up our Okay, so we'll just gently separate the lines off of the master so we don't bend them. Then out comes the master cylinder. So I wanted to show you, this is a pin type master cylinder. They also make a clip type. At the parts store they're going to ask you about that. You can also get just the body, and you can keep the factory reservoir. It doesn't matter either way. Okay, now that we have the master off, what we have to do is go inside from the opposite side, the interior side of the firewall, and take the bolts out for the brake booster. And we're going to have to be somewhat careful not to spill a bunch of brake fluid in there, but I'll show you how much is in there once we get this thing off. I'll drain it into a pan. Okay, so we are up under the dash. The first challenge, probably more challenging than, and I'll see if I can hold the camera and do this at the same time, but the clip right here, it's gonna be tough to do this with just one hand. So your goal is to get in like this without tearing any wires off. Again, doing this one-handed. So it's a spring clip essentially, so you need to lift this up off of the retaining pin. I gotta do this with two hands. You gotta lift this off of the retaining pin. I'll show you when I get it down here. Let me see if I can. Okay, we'll try this again. So here's my clip. Okay, as you can see, from one side it sits, it's got a fat end and a narrow end. So that pin, it slips on and then it pops up. You need to pry this off, like pry it back towards my pointer finger here, and then push it down at the same time, and then it allows it to pop off in your hand. Okay, it's not that hard, it just takes a little finagling, and you kind of got to have two hands. So that's how that comes off. Once that comes off, you can take the rod out, and then the only thing holding your booster in are the 4 bolts. So one there, one up there, one here, and then one over there. That's it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, guys, got the booster off. Can't say it's... Let me go this way so I'm not super shadowy. Can't say it's super easy. It takes some fooling around. The top side that's closest into the steering column is a little tough. It'll take you a few minutes. So I'm going to pour this out. I tried to find the cleanest pan I could to show you how much brake fluid's actually in here. So yeah, that's a lot. Definitely a lot. That's not supposed to be in there at all. So no brake fluid in the booster. One other thing I want to show you, got to remember, there's a seal. Where are we at here? There's a seal right on the back side of this master cylinder. The new one comes with it. Don't forget to put that on. Okay. So now we got to go bench bleed the master cylinder. I can show you how to do that real quick. Okay guys, we're going to bleed the master cylinder real quick. So this is a method called bench bleeding. There's two ways to do it. You can do it with the plugs in, which in that case you basically clamp your the body of the master cylinder, the housing, into a vise. Now don't clamp too hard, but you're going to need to push on it, so you don't want it too loose either. And you fill up the master, you take the plugs out, the factory plugs, or from the manufacturer, whatever, and you fill fluid, you know, up to your max line. Right as it starts to drip, you put plugs in. Okay, complete. They're like solid plugs. Okay, at that point, you basically use a blunt object to force the piston in 3/4 to an inch, somewhere around there, until it can't be depressed to more than 1/8 of an inch, pretty much, or it gets real tight. Okay, that's one way to do it. This way, it's different. I'm using bleeder tubes, so it's not any different other than I'm using bleeder tubes, and I'm still pushing in 1 to 3/4 of an inch, but I'm just waiting until I don't see any more air bubbles. You can do it either way. Just the plugs I have don't seal that well. This is just a cheap little kit. You get it like AutoZone, Napa, whatever, and it just redirects the both outlets back into the master cylinder itself. So you go, like I said, about 1 inch. Then you kind of go slow. Then you wait like 10 seconds, give or take, in between. And then you push it in again. And your whole goal is just to get it to a point where you don't see any more air bubbles. I kind of like doing it the other way. I just don't have the plugs that fit right now. So, you know. But there's a lot less bubbles at this point. I just use an extension. Okay, that's all this is. You can use a piece of dowel. You don't want to necessarily use a screwdriver or anything. I prefer something more blunt, but whatever. It doesn't matter. You just don't want to take a chance of scratching up the bore or anything like that. So I'm getting less air bubbles. So that's a good sign. So I'm going to pump this a couple more times, and that should be good, and then we'll take it over to the vehicle and we'll put it on. Okay, so we are ready to mount the new master cylinder onto the new booster. This is all tight. It was a little easier putting it back in than it was taking it out. Of course, the seal right here, put just a dab of new brake fluid on it. I always like to seal up or lube up any new O-rings of any sort. So we're just going to slip that on. I'm just going to start the bolts or the nuts so this thing doesn't come flying off the studs. And then, trying to go kind of quick. I might have to take those off. We'll see. We're going to kind of get this thing. Yeah, I think we're going to have to take this back off because of the orientation of the lines themselves. So we're going to kind of have to put it all on at once here. So I try to do it a little quick just in case you're spilling brake fluid. There shouldn't be too much that comes out of there, but there might be some. Like I said, it's inevitable. You're going to spill a little bit of brake fluid. Just keep it off the paint. I'm going to end up taking both of these off. It's a juggling act. It's a little easier with the plugs because you don't have the fluid spilling out quite as much. Those are out of the way. Well, I lost a little more fluid than what I prefer, but that's just how it goes. So now we'll get it slipped up on the studs. Tighten our lines. Okay, now I can go get my line wrench. We'll tighten the lines, we'll tighten those, and we're done up here. Okay guys, so before we bleed the brakes, I need to address this ABS light that's on. So what I'm thinking we got going on here is the air gap in between the ABS sensor and the wheel bearing housing has some rust. So I jumped ahead and took that all apart. And as you can see, there is some rust here. What this does is this actually creates a wider air gap between the end of the sensor right there and the tone ring, which actually kind of figures out how fast the wheel's spinning and so on and so forth. And that's what also activates the ABS. So because the ABS light's going, and it seems to be activating the ABS when you hit the brakes, I have a tendency to wonder if this rust and junk here is causing that to happen. So I'm going to clean everything up and tighten it back up, and yeah, that should do it. So I'm going to get to it. All right, so the surface for the mounting of the ABS sensor is all cleaned up here. Just used some memory cloth and a file. I'm going to push that thing back in and get it nice and tight in there. Not over tight. I don't want to break my little bolt here. And then we will. I'm going to do a quick AC test on it and see if I make sure the sensor is good. So I'll show you how to do that. All right, so we're doing a quick test of our ABS sensor. So it's back in the housing. It's tight. And what we're going to do is we are going to unplug the sensor from the vehicle. So we're working only on the sensor side. So we're not on the vehicle side. So right here is the plug going directly to the sensor. So it's unplugged. I took some gator clips. I put one on one side, one on the other. Make sure they're, of course, not touching. I clip my meter the same way, one on one side, one on the other. As you can see right now, I got my meter set to AC voltage. I do have it set in the volt range, okay, not millivolt. It doesn't matter, really. And it's sitting at, what it's sitting at right there. So basically, to test and see if this sensor is working, I just spin. I got my light off here. I just spin the hub. Okay, so now I'm spinning at like a medium pace, and you can see that reading actually jumps up. Okay, it'll take a minute to come back down. And of course, the faster you spin it, the higher the number goes. Okay, so I'm confident that this ABS sensor, wheel speed sensor, is all good. So I'm going to button everything back up, but that's just a quick way to test to make sure your sensor is good. So we have a nice mounting surface. We got a good sensor. Should be good to put everything back together. All right, guys, Chevy's all finished. Quick recap of what we did to fix the problem. Customer brought the vehicle in, had already replaced the brake caliper, brake lines, ABS sensor, brake hose, all kinds of different stuff, but he was still having his left front wheel hang up on him. So we brought it in, took a look at some stuff, did a quick test, checked to see if the caliper was actually sticking, which it wasn't, by getting the brake to stick and releasing the brake bleeder, which then allowed the wheel to spin, freed up the whole wheel. That led me to believe that there was something up the line. It wasn't in the caliper itself. What ended up happening was the master cylinder was bad. It leaked a bunch of fluid into the brake booster, so we went ahead and replaced the master cylinder and brake booster. So everything's bled, everything's back on and tight. We're good to go. Take it out for a quick test drive, send it on its way. Hope this video helped, guys. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, liking. Please comment. I love responding to all your guys' comments. I try to talk to everybody who comments. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at American Heritage Garage. You can email me at americanheritagegarage@gmail.com. You can find my phone number on Facebook if you're interested in having me do any work for you. Thanks for all the support, guys. And as always, till next time, we'll see you out here at American Heritage Garage.